So, does the government have a moral responsibility to regulate things like superheroes? This is going to be a little bit more of a fun video, I think. We're specifically going to be focused on two different movies that I actually rather enjoy because of the legal aspect, as weird as it sounds. So we have The Incredibles, both 1 and 2, and then we have Civil War, Avengers. It's Captain America Civil War. It's all of the Avengers. I don't know why they didn't just make it an Avengers movie, but whatever. That's for another video. But in both of those movies, there's a very interesting thing that comes up. So in The Incredibles, you have a situation in the first movie specifically where Mr. Incredible winds up like causing a whole bunch of chaos in the realm of saving people. And he saves one guy in particular that didn't want to be saved. This guy was trying to leap to his death off of a building. I forget what the reasoning was, but he didn't want to live. And Mr. Incredible saved him, causing some injuries, and so the guy sued, and all kinds of hell broke loose afterwards. Basically, superheroes were outlawed. You had all these people with these super abilities that were told, sorry, you're not allowed to exist anymore, so you're going to be in like a government witness protection type of program, right? And eventually, the world came around in The Incredibles 2 and decided that, we need to sign an accord and bring back superheroes. Let them save the day. Let them be the superheroes that they are, right? In Captain America Civil War, which I just had to rewatch because it had been a long time since I'd seen it, and I could not remember all of the little details of it. But basically, the situation is they are they're trying to save or trying to thwart this activity these bad guys are doing, right? And it results in the death of a bunch of people and the injury of a bunch of people when one of them, I forget who, throws one of the bad guys up and he blows up into a building, right? And so the world comes together and says they sign the Sokovia Accords, which is basically a thing that says that the superheroes have to be regulated and monitored through a United Nations panel. And there's a big debate in between, especially between Captain America and Tony Stark, about whether or not they should actually go along with this. And Tony, who is typically, against the establishment, he wants to do his own thing. He doesn't want to play by the rules. He is the one that's all for it. And he makes a good point where he talks about the fact that they are kind of out of control. They are doing whatever they want. And it's kind of a risk. People are getting killed. And essentially the governments, most of the governments that are arguing for this thing are saying that, hey, y'all don't respect borders. You're going wherever you want. You are intervening in things that you don't necessarily need to intervene in. And so we need to have some kind of control over when and where and how you do that. And that doesn't seem to be too unreasonable if you think about it. If you really go deep into it, realistically, any kind of weapon, which superheroes would technically be considered a weapon of mass destruction in certain circumstances. I mean, think about some of the things that some of them can do. The Hulk can destroy a city by himself, right? So you have to look at it from the angle of like, what would we want to have happen if an individual had control of a weapon of mass destruction that could take out an entire city if they just decided to? How would we want that handled? And then we have to look at what's the role of government and where does the government stand in? Because I think a lot of people, when you start talking about government, you start thinking about like the politics and all that kind of stuff. It gets really messy because a lot of governments, they fall short. Governments are made up of human beings, people who are flawed and make mistakes and do stupid shit and can become corrupt. And there's all kinds of problems there. But for the sake of our argument, we will assume a government that has good intentions, a government that is trying to do the right thing by its people. And we ask the question, is it moral? Would it be moral or the moral imperative of the government to step in and regulate and control people like superheroes? And realistically, the answer, I think, most of the time would come out to a yes. Now, whether you're looking at it from a deontological or utilitarian perspective, those are the things we usually do here, right? Deontology, duty-based, looking out for one another, being, trying to do the right thing, and how do we care for each other and that kind of thing. From a deontological perspective, you would say that it is our duty. It would be the duty of the government. Let's say we're acting as a government to ensure that our people are taken care of. And anytime you have a risk of something like a superhero that could do damage, not even intentional, not even trying to do harm, but a superhero who is trying to step in, they think they're doing the right thing, and they wind up causing more harm than good. And we really should be regulating that. We should be taking care of the people, making sure that the right thing is done. Even under utilitarianism, it would be argued that, for the greater good, for the people, we have a group of people that need taken care of. Well, the moral thing to do is the government is to step in and regulate these people, to tell them where and when they can and can't go and how they can fight and all that kind of stuff, to control them, almost like a missile. You aim it at a target and you're try to be very precise with it to make sure that you take out the target, right? But there's a flip side to that, and that is the side that Captain America actually argues for in the movie, when he's basically saying, under the circumstances, they could tell us where we can and can't go, which means there might be situations where we think we should intervene, but they're telling us we can't. And when you think about it from a political corruption standpoint, because in the real world that is a thing, what happens when the United Nations group is infiltrated? Even if it starts out pure, it gets infiltrated by people with bad intentions that intentionally say, we don't want the Avengers intervening in this thing over here because we support this. We want them intervening in this thing over here. And if the Avengers say, well, wait a minute, that's not right. This thing is wrong. This thing, people are dying, and this thing's not. In those kind of situations where you wind up having to decide if you're going to go against your moral values or if you're going to try to save people. If you think that, when you start to disagree, that's when it becomes a problem. As a former member of the military, I was in the Army for 6 years. I was in the active duty and then the National Guard. And I went to Iraq in 2011. So I have been in the situation that the Avengers would kind of be in as a military force, being told where to go and how to, what to do and how to do it and all of that kind of stuff. And thankfully, I was never faced with a situation where I had to question my my morality, where I was told, shoot this person even though I didn't think it was right. But that's a very real possibility, especially in the military, where your commander or somebody above you tells you need to go do this thing. You need to take out this enemy, even if you don't see it as an enemy. And the Avengers could be put in that very similar circumstance. Now, obviously, they are powerful enough that in theory, they could say, no, we're not going to do this. And then they could just go after their handlers. They could say, they could fight back. They could do all kind of stuff. But then that kind of defeats the purpose of the whole thing in the first place, right? Why would you even enter into the agreement? And that's Captain America's argument. Morally speaking, if you stand for something, and we see this in the world that we currently live in. The United States has done this for decades, and other countries around the world have as well, going in and intervening where they think where they want to intervene what's in their best interest. And what's to stop the UN from doing that? And so if you're Captain America, if you stand for freedom, if you stand for people's rights and you want to see everybody treated well, he fought in World War II against Nazi Germany, and he was, all of these things that he holds dear, and he's afraid. What do you do when they tell you have to go do this thing that's against your moral values? Because inevitably, that's what happens with human beings. It's using psychology, and it's understanding how people think and how these, especially politicians and people in power, and how they do things, and saying, hey, that's not okay from a moral level. But that's not even the biggest conundrum that they face. And the biggest moral issue they face is where the bad guys come from, where the villains come from. Because a lot of the villains, and they bring this up as part of the discussion, a lot of the villains, I think it's Vision that says it, a lot of the villains they face, a lot of the problems they face are coming out of the woodwork because they have become so big and well known. And when you standardize that force as a government, as you say, we're going to standardize this force, this is going to be our way of protecting people and doing the right thing, are you creating more villains? Are you creating more people that are going to come out of the woodwork and try to challenge that? They see that as something they need to go against. They see that as something that, hey, I've heard these people are unbeatable. I'm going to make that a personal challenge. I'm going to go after them. How much is that going to push? And that's always the flaw in superhero movies and in general, even in the real world, as we function on a day-to-day basis, internationally and even nationally, even locally, that kind of thing. It's always the question. You always have that one person that's going to try to troll or going to try to one up. They see it not as a deterrent. They see it as a challenge. Oh, this country has a big military. Well, I'm going to challenge their big military. That's happened. And it happens even in the situation with superheroes. So you wind up in trying to protect the public and trying to do the right thing, you wind up almost creating more monsters than you had to deal with to begin with. And just to pile onto it, the moral imperative to protect people, the where this all boils down to, and the big disagreement is, where does that moral imperative lie? Is it on the government to decide where the superheroes go and whether the superheroes can protect people? Or is it on the superheroes? And it becomes a liability issue for a lot of people. When you have people that are getting hurt as a result of the heroes coming in and trying to save the day, you have people that are going to be suing. You have people that are going to be angry. You have people that are going to be hurt, mentally, physically, whatever, who are going to say, this isn't right. I deserve compensation. I was doing nothing wrong. I was going about my daily business. And all of a sudden, this giant dude comes flying in, carrying a spaceship and tosses it down and blows up my car or kills my children or whatever. When that kind of stuff happens, there is always somebody's got to pay the price. That's just the way that society works. We always have this thing where somebody has to pay.
Someone's got to go to prison, man.
It's a morbid, twisted sense of justice, but it's something that is just inherent in the human condition. If superheroes save the city, but my dog was killed by a car that was tossed, someone needs to pay for that. Someone needs to go to jail. Someone needs to pay, something has to happen. And from the government stance, they're the ones that are easily sued in a lot of situations, or easily gone after in a lot of situations. From a justice system perspective, the people who allowed it to happen, often because the superheroes aren't necessarily easy to take down. They aren't easy to put in jail. Most of them, if they do go, have to go willingly, and some of them have secret identities. The only reason Tony Stark is known as Iron Man is because he told everybody, but not everybody knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, at least, in some versions. But that's the problem, is what if a superhero that has a secret identity comes around? Who the hell are you going to blame? People are going to go after the government. So is it on the superhero? How do you hold them accountable? It's all about accountability and how do we handle those things? So it's a lot to think about, and it's really a fascinating topic. It's one I've been excited to talk about. I know there's a lot more to it, but these videos, I tried to boil it down as simple as possible to make the conversation as easy to approach as possible and to have a little bit of fun with it along the way. We've done a lot of Walking Dead stuff, and I'm going to do some more Walking Dead stuff, in the future here. I've got other things I want to talk about, but I'm expanding into these other things. I've been talking about them, and I would encourage you to go check out some of the ones. We've talked about Monsters, Inc. We've talked about The Green Mile. So I'm trying to expand. I've got other things. I'm going to be talking about Harry and the Hendersons at some point here soon. I've got, if you notice my shirt, Halloween is coming up. Halloween is my favorite time of year, and I'm planning on doing a bunch of fun horror movies for Halloween for the month of October. So all of that's coming up, and I'm going to be breaking them down in a way that you haven't really seen before. My ultimate goal with this is to think about some of these things outside the box, look at them a little bit differently. I know there is a million channels out there that look at things from different perspectives in universe. I'm trying to bridge the gap and make them thought experiments to kind of ask questions and kind of dig deeper into things. So if that's something that you enjoy, I should have said this at the beginning, but subscribe. If you've stuck around this long, subscribe to the channel. Watch my other stuff, especially the recent stuff. Maybe you don't like The Walking Dead. Maybe that's not your interest, but I've got a lot of other stuff on the channel as well. And even though it's called Lost in Games, we're obviously expanding beyond games. So if you have any suggestions of things you'd like to see me break down or talk about in a different way, leave those down in the comment section below, because I'm looking for more suggestions. I've got things. The Thing is one of the movies I'm going to be talking about here for Halloween, for October. I've got that all planned out. That was suggested by a viewer a couple weeks ago. So leave your comments down below about what you'd like to see, what you think about superheroes, whether you would blame, what if you were in a situation where a superhero inadvertently broke something or killed somebody that you cared about in trying to save the day? Do you think that is it utilitarian to look at the greater good and say, well, we saved the city, 1,000 people died, but we saved the city? Where does that balance occur? And that's all fun stuff, and I'll probably break more of that down if you guys are interested in some of that stuff moving forward. But that's all I've got for this one. I didn't say but I want to thank you all for watching. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.